Let's just start with the one big question that frames this entire story. Can a solution actually be worse than the problem it's supposed to fix? It's a tricky idea, and it can have some pretty devastating consequences. Keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this.
All right, so picture this. Our story kicks off in this beautiful, totally serene spot. You've got a pair of cranes, and they've built their nest way up high in a tall tree, right by the banks of a clear river. I mean, it was their safe haven, just filled with all this hope for the new family they were about to start.
But that peace, it just wasn't meant to last. They go out searching for food, and when they come back, it's every parent's worst nightmare. The nest is empty. Their precious eggs are just gone, vanished without a trace, leaving them completely heartbroken and, honestly, just confused.
But, they were determined, so they tried again. They built a new nest, laid a new clutch of eggs, and this time they guarded them fiercely. Still, there was this sense of dread just kind of hanging in the air. The tragedy was about to repeat itself. But this time, things were going to be a little different.
The question that was just eating away at them was simple. Who was the thief? Who was this unseen enemy that kept lurking around, literally stealing their future from them again and again?
Well, this time was different. This time, there was a witness. As the danger got closer, the mother crane was right there, and she saw everything unfold.
And the culprit? It was a massive snake. It methodically slithered its way up that tall tree, heading straight for the nest. The mother crane was powerless. All she could do was back away and watch in absolute terror as the snake devoured her eggs, destroying all her hopes right there in front of her.
So as you can imagine, they were devastated and desperate. The cranes knew they couldn't possibly face this powerful enemy on their own. They had to find help. And this is what leads them to form what turns out to be a very, very dangerous alliance. The father crane, feeling the weight of his family's safety on his shoulders, went to a friend who was known for being pretty clever, an old crab. He laid out the whole terrible situation, just hoping the crab could come up with a smart plan to defeat an enemy they couldn't fight themselves.
And the crab's plan? On the surface, it sounded kind of brilliant. Let's break it down. Step 1. You lay a trail of fish, starting all the way from a mongoose's den. Step 2. You make sure that trail leads the mongoose right to the base of your tree. And then Step 3, the final piece of the puzzle. You just let nature take its course. A mongoose is a snake's natural predator, so it'll find the snake and do all the dirty work for them. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
And this brings us right to the climax of the story, what we're calling the cost of the cure, because their victory, as you're about to see, came at a terribly bitter price. At first, everything went exactly as they'd hoped. The plan worked like a charm. The mongoose, drawn by that irresistible smell of fish, followed the trail, step by step, all the way to the crane's tree. And sure enough, it found the snake right where they knew it would be. A fierce battle kicked off between these two natural enemies. And, just like the crab predicted, the mongoose won. The snake was defeated. The crane's problem was finally solved.
Can you imagine the relief they must have felt? Their enemy was gone, their future family was safe, but was the problem really solved?
Because the very next day they went to check on their brand new clutch of eggs, and what they found was a new, and maybe even worse, horror.
And here it is. This is the gut punch, the awful irony of the whole story. Their first enemy, the snake, was a clear threat. It ate their eggs. But their cure, the mongoose, it solved that problem only to create the exact same one. After killing the snake, the mongoose just climbed the tree and, you guessed it, ate their new eggs too.
So that tragic twist is really the whole point, isn't it? It brings us to the most important part of all of this, the lessons from the nest. What's the timeless wisdom we can take away from this fable?
Well, here's the crucial thing they learned the hard way. In their desperate rush for a quick fix, they hadn't actually solved their problem. They had simply replaced one enemy with another. And you could argue this new one was way more dangerous, because this one came disguised as a friend.
This whole story really gives us 3 powerful takeaways. First, we've got to think through all the consequences of our actions, not just the immediate fix. Second, we have to be really careful with those quick fixes, because they often lead somewhere even more dangerous. And finally, if we can face our problems with a calm, clear mind, we're much more likely to find a real solution instead of just trading one enemy for another.
But look, if you remember just one thing from this story, let it be this. The cure should never, ever be worse than the disease.
The whole point of solving a problem is to make things better, not to accidentally invite a new, even more complicated problem into your life.
And that really leaves us with one last question to ask ourselves. In our own lives, when we're faced with a snake, what quick-fix mongoose are we inviting in to solve our problems? It's a really powerful question, and definitely one worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.
So let's just jump right in with a kind of provocative question. Is laziness the mother of invention? I mean, we're all told to just work harder, right? But what if? What if the best solutions don't come from more sweat, but from a really strong desire to avoid it? Let's keep that in mind as we meet our hero.
To really explore this, our story kicks off with a very specific kind of person. Let's call him the lazy genius. And well, he's got a pretty serious problem on his hands.
Okay, so what exactly is a lazy genius? This isn't just about hitting the snooze button. No, this guy is incredibly smart, but he channels all of that brain power into one thing, finding the easiest possible way to do something. You know, picture a guy who, instead of actually tilling his fields, builds this crazy system of ropes and pulleys so he can do it all while lying down in the shade. That's our guy.
But that comfortable little world he built for himself, it's all about to come crashing down. A crisis hits his family, and it's something that his clever shortcuts just can't fix.
So here's what happened. His father gets seriously ill, and without him, the family farm, their whole life really, starts to fall apart. Just when things are looking totally hopeless, they hear about this big competition happening in the city. And the prize? A ton of gold. Enough to solve everything. All of a sudden, this isn't about avoiding a bit of work anymore. This is about survival.
So he decides he has to enter. And the reaction is pretty much what you'd expect. Everyone who knows him just laughs. The lazy boy trying to win a competition of strength and skill? It sounds like a joke, but he's doing it for his family. So he just ignores them and signs up anyway.
And that brings him to the very first challenge, the Lake of Ingenuity. This is where we get the first real peek into how his mind actually works.
The task sounds pretty straightforward, right? You just have to get to the other side of this huge lake. First one there moves on to the final. So, how would you do it?
And this moment shows the two different approaches perfectly. On one hand, you have brute force. Most of the competitors just dive right in and start swimming as hard as they possibly can. They're all about pure physical power, and they get exhausted fast. But then you have our hero. He takes a totally different approach, smart work. He just pauses for a second, looks around, and uses some branches he finds to build a simple little raft. Then he just paddles across.
And the result? Well, it's not even close. He gets to the other side first, and he's barely even broken a sweat. While everyone else is crawling out of the water, totally wiped out, he's just standing there, ready for whatever's next. He's in the final.
Which brings us to the last test. This one is designed to be the ultimate challenge of strength and pure will, the unmovable block.
So the final challenge is just huge. Each person has to move this giant, heavy wooden block for a whole kilometer. But here's the catch, the thing that makes it so hard. You only get to pick one tool to help you. Just one.
And the choice of tools here tells you everything you need to know. The other competitors, they make the logical choice. They grab ropes to pull, levers to get some, well, leverage. But our hero, he does something that makes absolutely no sense to anyone. He picks a small knife. I mean, can you imagine the crowd? They must have thought he was crazy. What on earth is he going to do with a tiny knife?
And right here, we see his genius strategy in action. It's just a masterclass in thinking differently. First, he totally ignores the obvious solution of just pushing or pulling harder. Second, his tool seems weird because his goal is totally different. And that leads to the real magic trick. He decides to completely reshape the problem itself.
So while all the other competitors are sweating and straining, trying to drag these massive square blocks, he spends about an hour just carving. With his little knife, he starts shaving off the corners of his block. He's not trying to move it at all. He's transforming it. He turned his impossible, unmovable block into a giant wooden ball, which he then, you guessed it, just easily rolled to the finish line.
So he won. He saved his family. But more than that, his victory was a demonstration of a really powerful idea. The true power of smart work.
It really all boils down to that phrase we've all heard a million times, work smarter, not harder. His entire journey is proof that the best solution isn't always the one that demands the most effort.
And that's really what smart work is all about. It's using your brain, your creativity, your strategy to get better results with less physical struggle. It's about changing how you see the problem before you even start to solve it.
When you break it all down, his success wasn't just about being lazy. It was a kind of formula. First, he had a powerful motivation, his family. That's what drove him. Then, he had that ability to think outside the box, like with the raft. And, most importantly, he had the wisdom to reshape the problem, which turned an impossible task into an easy one.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. Take a look at the big challenges in your own life, the things that feel like these giant, unmovable blocks. Maybe the answer isn't to just keep pushing harder. Maybe you just need to pick up a different tool and give that problem a completely new shape.